Joe talks about Joe. And now, your host, Joe Slepsky.
Well, hello again, everybody, and welcome back to Joe on Joe. It's me, your host, Joe Slepsky, and we're back after the first little hiatus from this new era of, I guess we'd call it occasional Joe on Joes. Hope everyone's had a good couple of weeks. I got a bunch of submissions to our I guess we're calling it our After Action Report giveaway. If you missed last episode and you don't know what I'm talking about, go back and listen. We've got a contest running to give away some After Action Report magazines, books. They're not really books. I don't know, what do we call these? They're guidebooks, companions, amazing pieces of G.I. Joe literature is what they are. And that winner will be announced next week, next week's episode, the one that airs Wednesday, the 19th of March. So if you're hearing this and you're still curious, what do I got to do to enter this After Action Report and win some free swag from Joe on Joe? Just go back and listen to the previous episode where I covered, kind of give a review to the latest After Action Report. Companion. I think companion's the right word. So please do that. Also, please say hi on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can find me at Joe on Joe Pod, and for however long social media lives, because right now it's been quite a cluster for most recent times. Algorithms are broken everywhere. Things are being run by insane people. So we'll see how long I stay at socials. But for now, those are there and they're alive, and it is a great way to connect with you all. And thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for coming back and listening. I appreciate each and every one of you. I hope everyone has had a great couple weeks. I did TF Con last weekend. That was fun. Transformers Con out here in California. I looked for as much G.I. Joe stuff as I could find. I was only there Sunday, though, so everything may have been picked over. In fact, I heard from a good source that they saw a bunch more G.I. Joe stuff on Saturday, so that may have been picked over. But I looked for some good G.I. Joe stuff, saw a few, literally nothing under $200. No, that's not true, because they were normal priced classifieds there, but I have all those. So I guess vintage stuff that I was looking for. Like, I didn't see any loose figures. I saw a lot of mint on, like, vintage on cards, which I love and totally in the market for, but they were just a little more than I wanted to spend that show. But it looked like a great show, and it was super crowded. So kudos to you Transformers fans. That was a lot of fun. Also, shout out to our friends over at What's on Joe Mind. I guest hosted on their show recently. The Irizarry brothers are keeping it down and holding it down and keeping it alive, whatever the phrase you young kids are using these days. And they're killing it over there, and I love joining them because it's live, so we get to actually interact with some of the listeners. It's great seeing you guys. Yorktown Joe, you were there. Guys and gals on their chat and stuff, and it's just fun to get different Joe energy. I do this show solo, so I really love interacting with people. And the best part, the secret part that I love about guest starring on a show like that, or guest hosting, or whatever it is I don't have any responsibilities. My only responsibility is to be stupid and as funny as I can be. Whether you find it funny or not, I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and say it's successful, but that's my only job. When you do your own show, you kind of, you have to check the time. You have to, follow your format. You have to do all that stuff. But whenever I get to guest star on another podcast, I can just be silly. And that is one of my favorite things. I've also been guest starring on my friend Christian Hans Horn's podcast, Part-Time Fanboy. I've been doing a lot of guest stars on that lately. We've been talking a lot of Planet of the Apes. We recently recorded one. I don't know when it's going to air, but hope this isn't breaking an NDA. We recorded a Howard the Duck episode where we talked about Howard the Duck, the movie, and that was a whole lot of fun. So, if you're listening and you want me to be a guest, it ain't hard. Or if you're listening and you never want me to be a guest in your show, that's even easier to do. Just ignore it. So today, I wanted to pop back in with 1 week to go before the contest, just to remind everyone, hey, reach out if you want to join that contest. Do it. Go back, listen to the show, and then you'll know how. So I will be back next week with something. I don't know what, but this week I wanted to do G.I. Joe in 3D, the annual. As I said last week, there's a few like bits of ephemera that I want to clean up before, just get cleaned up, get out of the way, so as we see what the next phase of Joe and Joe looks like. And this is certainly one of them. So it's a 3D book. I've read it in 3D. It is visually, literally hard for me to talk about it now with those glasses on, because I wear glasses and I can't do it without them, and with them I can't see, and without them I can't see. So some of the 3D effect comments that I'll have here are going to be from memory, but I will say this comic book from Blackthorn Publishing, it was $2.50 US back when it was printed in spring of 1989. It is one of the worst to ever do it. The worst. And then we're going to get into the reasons why. I try to be positive on this show. I don't know if you guys ever noticed that. I try my hardest to bring positivity. I think it's real easy to nitpick. I think it's real easy to just critique in the sense of like, it wasn't to my taste, so I think it sucks. Like, I don't like that. It's one of the reasons I don't do real modern comics, because it's a lot of things need time to ruminate, or to savor. No, what's the word? It's been marinate. That's the word. It's been so long since I've regularly cooked meat. So there's some stuff I don't really like doing. Like, I don't like doing the modern stuff. We talk about that a little bit on What's on Joe Mind, and I'm pretty much like, I love it. I love all the modern stuff. I think it's great. There's a few things that I go, whatever, but there's always time to fix that. There's always creative things. You never know what's coming. When we look at older books like this book is now 89. It's almost 40 years old. We know what came after this, and we can look at what this finished product is. And in real time, if I were buying this in 1989 and I spent $2.50 on this book, and I got this unfinished piece of slop, I would have been quite upset. If I recall, the last time we did this, Blackthorn was probably 6 months ago when we were doing these. Blackthorn, as a publishing company, ran into a bunch of trouble financially, and they had churned out a bunch of these real quick. If I'm remembering that correctly, probably some of the details are wrong, but I believe that was the case. Having said that, there is no excuse for the level of unfinished pages, the number of unfinished pages that are in this comic book. If you've never read it, seek it out. I think there probably are PDFs on like the Art of G.I. Joe, Carson's website. They might have some, or maybe yojo.com has some PDFs of this. This is the annual, the 3D annual. I have not seen unfinished pages like this in a printed comic book. I actually can't remember. Like, these are literally storyboards. They're literally rough sketches for what either the writer wanted to have happen in some of these pages, or the artist was doing layouts and they never finished it. The only quasi-acceptable answer to this would be if somehow accidentally the layout pages got submitted to the printer and it was too late to fix that. If that happened, that sucks, and I'm sorry, and I'll take this back. But if they consciously sent this to the printer, I cannot drive home how poor this is. There are pages that are unacceptable for a human being to pay real money for, let alone to have the G.I. Joe imprint on. I've got some problems with the story, pacing, things like that. We're going to get into it because we are going to do a full Joe and Joe illustrated page by page, panel by panel look at it. There's pacing issues with the story, but overall the story's fine. It's totally standard and not surprising. It totally could work as an episode of the show, more likely a DIC episode, but it could be an episode of the show. Like, it fits. Like, it's not the worst story I've ever read. It is the production value of this book is offensive to someone with $2.50 in their pocket. That's my point. So we're going to get into it. Now, it starts with the cover. It's got like an purple cover. It says G.I. Joe in 3D annual, purple background. And it's got our two lead characters, the only Joes in the whole story, our two characters. Now, we know who they are because, we like J. Joe. One of the problems of this comic book is that it does not name these characters until a third of the way through the actual comic book. Number one rule, you're doing a comic book, man, it's someone's first comic book. You got to name your character. It's the number one rule, quite frankly, of a lot of writing. It's not just comic books writing. My wife teaches sketch comedy writing. And in the first 3 sentences, you are literally supposed to get out your premise, your characters, and how they, what's their relationship? How do they know each other? Literally in the first 3. Like that is the first piece of information that anyone reading something should get to understand. I will say this, there's the caveat of maybe there's a mystery or, where you're trying to keep it hidden for some reason. But in general, 95% of the stories that you tell, you're not doing that. You're just telling a story. And here are 2 Joes who might have been new. Actually, he was 89, so they were kind of new to readers at the time. They certainly weren't featured heavily in the mainstream comic, which is why I think Blackthorn got to use a lot of these. So I'm welcoming seeing them. It's Spearhead and Max and Muskrat. Sorry, I'm bearing the lead there. I'm doing exactly what the comic book did to you. You guys didn't know who I was talking about because I didn't say their name. It's Spearhead and Max and Muskrat. I like both of these, all 3 of these dudes. I recently got a complete Spearhead and Max set. I say set because I never had Max. I only had Spearhead. And I recently got a Muskrat, complete Muskrat. I absolutely like both of them. I think they totally fit in with my favorite era of Joes. I think they absolutely work. And whoever wrote this forgot to say their names. So if you're reading this, they don't. Anyway, you hear what I'm saying. So first page, we've got an ad for Rambo comic books coming from Blackthorn Publishing. I'm not sure how many of these were printed, but the artwork is by Aaron Lopresti. He did the pencils. Aaron Lopresti is the stuff. He's legit good quality artist. This drawing of Rambo looks really great. I can't see how Blackthorn continued to pay someone who actually had talent, but they did. I don't know how many issues of Rambo Blackthorn. In fact, I'll be right back. I'm going to pause this. Okay, I'm back. According to my comic book database, there were technically 3 Rambo comics published, but realistically only 2. There was Rambo, which is the issue that they're promoting here. So technically, where it says Rambo comic books with an S, a plural, they technically are correct. So it says Rambo. There was 1 issue of this produced with Aaron Lopresti art, so that's cool. And then there was a Rambo 3, I'm assuming a movie adaptation, written by Bruce Jones of all people. So that's really cool. That then was also, it appears to have been republished as a 3D issue. So technically there would be 3 Rambo books coming from Blackthorn with 2 pieces of content, 1 repurposed to be a 3D. That's what it appears, at least by the cover. Who knows? Maybe there might be different interior. I don't have that. So don't hold that against me. However, I like this Rambo, and it fits that there's a Rambo ad in a G.I. Joe comic book. So we open in a swamp in the Bayou Vista, Louisiana, and for being a swampy swamp, this kid and his girl are parked like really close to the swamp in their sports car. I feel like I'm no swamp expert, but you shouldn't be bringing your sports car that close to literally the edge of the swamp when I think the ground is all swamp. That seems silly. However, they're there. Think of it as inspiration point. They're there to make out. So I'll say this. I don't know if this was on purpose. Obviously, it was on purpose. This was a choice he made. But the writer has, which is a cool. This is a cool one thing. One is a cool choice. The girl is coming on to the guy. So the girl is like making her moves on the guy, and the guy is being like, "I'm just not ready," I'm nervous. I don't really want to go all the way with you. But their names are confusing. I guess the spelling's even wrong or weird. It's Billy Joe and Bobby. Both of those names could be boys or girls. So I had to read this 3 times to understand, especially because he's flipping the traditional gender role. You know, traditionally you would have it where the guy's like, hey, come on, girl. Now, I like that they flipped it. 1, because it's not expected. 2, because you do want to root for this guy because this guy's about to get kidnapped. Spoiler alert. You want to root for him. So if he's the aggressor here and he's like, come on, Billy Joe or Bobby Joe or Billy Joe. Billy Joe is the girl and Bobby's the boy. You know, if he was like, come on, Billy Joe, let's make it, you know, and Billy Joe's like, I don't want to, then you'd be okay with this guy getting kidnapped. And you totally don't want to get that. So I'm wondering if they even made that change, you know, like in editorial. But that makes that's really a smart move. I will totally giving them credit for that. But it's funny. So he's trying not to make out with her. She says, I swear, Bobby, you are the most infuriating boy in the whole school. But they start do a little kissy kiss, and there is a shadow that cuts across the car. I think of it's very much like Zodiac Killer, right? And the next page is the big splash page where it says G.I. Joe in 3D. It's all in 3D, and it's called Things That Go Splash in the Night. It's written by John Stevenson, pencils by Lorenzo Lizana, with inks by Andy Ice and Jorge Pacheco. And the 3D was done by Paul Tallarday. I will say, Paul Tallarday, you get a pass. The 3D is pretty good. Everything looked really clear. I liked it. John Stevenson, you get a pass. The same thing. This issue has the same problems as some of the other ones did, in that the pacing is slow. There's not enough action to justify the length of pages here. You either need to add another beat, tighten it up, or just do less pages. But having said that, it's all fine. The problem we're going to run into is with Lorenzo Lizana and or Andy Ice and Jorge Pacheco. I don't know, we'll get to it when we get to it, but therein is going to lie these problems. Having said that, the finished pages, and I stress the word finished pages look fine. They're very cartoony. They're very DIC cartoony. They're very rookie comic book artist faces as the book progresses. Some are better than others. It's really the earlier pages that look better. So I'm assuming they were making them sequentially, and like on this third page, the girl's face is great. Totally look great. Astonishment, like there's acting on there. Like that looks fine. The monster, the swamp, all that stuff looks totally good. I see the need in the 3D ish of the ness of the book, like to keep it a little more cartoony. I think that's probably important. You don't want a ton of background details to kind of distract from what is and isn't 3D. Having said that, there's a lot of open panels and just, not a lot of depth of background and detail, but I think that works here. So that's not a critique. It's just more of a description, because you're dealing with a 3D, and that's going to be distracting enough. So that's not a critique, more of a commentary. So there is a swamp monster looking like Creature from the Black Lagoon. And I love that. Now we know that it's you can guess that it's the Hydro Vipers, the ones that were, in lore were the eels that were experimented on and turned into, underwater monsters. But they haven't said that yet, but you can kind of glean that from this shadowy Creature of the Black Lagoon looking thing. But I like it. It's total monster. Like it's a total monster movie thing, and it works great. So the girl escapes. She's running away from the car. Bobby's trying to run. He trips, sprains his ankle. He yells at Billy Joe to get some help, and the monster looms over Bobby. This should have been the end of their story. They should have had just like 3 pages to set up what's going on, right? But it's not. We get 2 more pages, so we go all the way up to 5 pages of this preamble. We see the Hydro Viper pull him into the water, and this is where it breaks down, because if we're not supposed to know that it's a Hydro Viper, we've now seen that it's a Hydro Viper. It's fully drawn as a Hydro Viper, so that kind of ruins any mystery for the reader. So that's a little bit of a problem. And then she yells at him to let him go, you ugly freak. And she runs to the edge of the water and she sees that he's disappeared. While she's at the edge of the water, all of a sudden, it's a makeout point is just bustling with people. There's two couples that come up. They're like, "Hey, keep it down, will you?" They know her. "Hey, look, it's Billy Joe." They see her screaming. "Tell us what happened." She says it took him. He was a monster. They're like, "Well, Bobby was the monster?" No. So it's just this, like, it's all this extra stuff that's not needed to tell this story. And as she's talking, they look in the distance and we see that you see the swamp monster again. In this case, it's the Hydro Viper, but you see him carrying Bobby away. And so now these other two couples also have seen the monster. None of this is important. These 2 pages shouldn't exist. You should, you're doing a director's cut of this. Those are the first 2 pages that go. So now the narrative shifts, and now it's shifting over to the Joes. And there's nothing on this next page, page 6, to denote that. It's just another panel of, black. Also, it's black and white, but it's not, because it's red and blue. But so it's kind of like black and white. So there's no color grading to, like, show a shift in time of day. You know what I mean? Like, just a passage of time. There's nothing done here to denote that we're elsewhere in the bayou. So it's a poor transition here. However, it is the 2 Joes, Spearhead and Max and Muskrat. Max. Max. If I keep only saying 2 Joes, you are a Joe, so it's 3 Joes. But here we go. Who is it? Spearhead is saying, "Boy, the air smells great." He says, "You grew up around here, didn't you?" It should say, comma, Muskrat. But it doesn't. So it's just 2 dudes talking to each other, except in the 3rd panel, Muskrat name checks the Bobcat Max. And Max gets name checked once, twice, 3, 4 times in 2 pages, and neither of the Joes have been named. Page 3 of the Joes section, 5, another name check for Max. We have 5 name checks for Max, and at near the end of the 3rd page, before we finally name one of the characters, and it's Spearhead calling out to Muskrat. And then we have to go page 9. Some random dude named Paulie gets name checked before we get Spearhead. Let's see. When does he say his... Oh, here it is. It's page 11. That's right. Which is one of the first really problematic pages. Page 11 is the first time Spearhead's name is said. We meet Paulie, the husky, mustachioed swamp dweller guy. This is not great. And wasn't it that the writer was also the editor? I think that's a big problem here. Note to up and coming comic buyers. So this is illustrative of the storytelling problems I have here. Anyway, so they're in the swamp. They're actually in a devilfish, which is kind of neat. It looks like it's a devilfish. It's hard to tell because it's not the distinctive orange and it's not drawn 100% accurate. But yeah, it looks like they're cruising around on a devilfish, which is neat. They're setting up microwave relay dishes to keep an ear on Cobra Island. I love that. That they're actually on a mission. They're not just like having a vacation kind of a thing. So they land the boat. They get out there. They're setting up these relay dishes. Max smells trouble. And Max finds it's an actual paw. Oh, it's a paw print. A paw print of a Hydro Viper. And he's smelling it. Also, Max is drawn very funny. Like, he looks like a cartoon bobcat. He looks like like Snarf from Thundercats. But, it's not terribly inaccurate to what the toy looked like, to be honest. So I'm not even going to take points off of that. But Spearhead realizes that Max is onto something. But nobody checks it out. Okay, so now we're on page 8. And this is another example of writing that just needs an editor. So here we go. Muskrat says, hope the Alamagusalum didn't get him. And, Spirit says, Allahu? And he says, the boogeyman, it's a local legend, haunts the swamps. And that's fine. That's fun, bringing that up. That's great. Keep that in mind. So Max gets a whiff of somebody or other. And there's some trouble. So the Joes get the Joe's arm up. And that's when this dude, Paulie, jumps out of the woods. And they're like, we don't want no trouble. And Paulie recognizes Muskrat. Now, this page is the start of some really, really poor artwork. The faces on Muskrat and Spearhead are not good. But it's passable. And we realize that Paulie and Muskrat know each other. They embrace in a very masculine hug. Hey guys, this is Ross talking about Muskrat. He went to high school back in Thibodaux. And here's a funny line, credit. He says, yep, the best 6 years of my life. That's funny. So he says, what brings you to these parts, Paulie? And he says, we got some problems, Ross. Some of our kids have disappeared in the swamps. Some were found tore up real bad. We think it's got to be I'll mispronounce this, Gaidale, Gaidale, Gadil. So Spirit says, Gadil, is this any relation to the Alamahoozits? And he says, no, man, this is a lot worse. And, so they're having fun with Spearhead. I am all for having fun with Spearhead. I'm all for, the local legends, all that. That's great. Why do we need 2 of them? Why do we need to introduce both of them? You know what I mean? Like, you have Muskrat set us up for what one of the local legends is. And then the other guy comes along and goes, yeah, we think it is that local legend. And then we're moving on. There's what is going on? Because the Alamahoozits is never mentioned again. It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. Also nuts is Paulie and his boys who are out here apparently hunting this guy. They weren't part of that posse of kids that saw this go down. So you know what I mean? Like, there's just all these extraneous characters for no real good reason. Anyway, so we get to page 11. This is where we meet Spearhead for the first time, even though we met him 5 pages earlier. And the artwork on this page is abysmal. This is like the back of your high school notebook level line work. I don't know. It had to be, obviously, there was a problem. And this goes for the entire book. There had to have been a production problem. They were running late to press. Someone had to slap this down. Either way, you still charge $2.50 for this. It's hard to describe just how bad this is. You kind of have to see it to believe it. It looks like when you go up and down Artist Alley and you see those, like the black and white, self-printed, self-Xeroxed comics that someone's got a fun idea for. And sometimes they're great. Sometimes the ideas are great, but the execution is always lacking. And I say that with all due respect. I say that knowing that, I don't even know if I could do this good, but I'm actually looking at this going, I think I could do better than this. And I'm not meaning that in any irony. Like there's a level of completion that does not get achieved. So that's one page of that. And then you go to page 12 and it's a full page. It's completed with inks and proper rendering. And this page 12 looks great. It does. It's nighttime. Spirit and Max are hiding in the bushes. They're waiting to kind of catch this Gilale or monster or whatever it is. They hear someone screaming. They go running. And when they get there, it's all three of Polly's friends. They're all dead, except for there were only three. It was Polly and two other dudes. So does that mean Polly's dead? And is that what we're supposed to like? Is this? It's actually unclear. Like he says, it's Polly's friends, all three of them. There were only three guys, so I think that means Polly's dead. But they've been mauled by something. There's no tracks. They don't know. Muskrat is saying it must have come from the water. They look like claw marks, like some wild animal. And that's when we get a nice 3D hand cut across the screen here, and we hear a little like coming from this monster. This is classic Black Lagoon stuff. I will say the drawing here completely omits the fact that Spearhead has a waist and legs. That's a problem. Whoever drew this thought they could get away with not drawing the Spearhead, so he actually looks like he's a conjoined twin with Muskrat. And now this should be the page that's the big reveal. And unfortunately, it's the same kind of reveal that we got on the very first page. The Hydra Viper is an absolute shadow. So he looks like a monster to them and to us. That's great, except that we saw this already. We were already given this tease, and then we were also given a non-in-shadow version when they drew the Hydra Viper dragging the kid into the water. This needed to be the page that we show Hydra Viper in full detail. Like, have a spotlight on him, for whatever reason. He shouldn't be in this much shadow. We should be seeing him as the Hydra Viper that he is. But we don't. It's still played up like he's a monster. But we know that he's not. So moving on, we're on page 15. Max gets involved, which is great. He jumps up, bites the Hydra Viper in the face. Spearhead lets us know that they actually don't know that it's a Hydra Viper or what it is. They're like, we don't know what that is, but we better get, they think Max is actually going to kill the guy. So they're like, we better get Max off. Except in this one panel, Max is getting thrown off. That is barely legible in this drawing. Max is thrown behind the guys. If the focus of this panel is that you want to see Max being thrown by this Hydra Viper, Max needs to be in the foreground of this panel, and the dudes need to be shrunk into the back and see Max fly past him and go, uh-oh. That's what this panel needs to look like. So that's a poor decision. And Muskrat, takes a charge at the Swamp Rat, or the Hydra Viper. Okay. Page 16 is tough to look at. The rendering in this top panel is again, it's amateurish. It looks like it was done with a mark, like a Bic pen. I'm not even joking. That's not an exaggeration. The bottom of the page, there's a couple panels that look a little bit more rendered, but they're not really. But this first panel is a layout. It completely is a layout. It's what they wanted that panel to look like, and no one drew it, or they ran out of time, or something terrible. But what happens is, story-wise, is Muskrat connects with his machete. The Hydra Viper throws him down and jumps away into the water. I don't think he cut his arm off, but it looks like there might be. No, I don't think. Yeah, it doesn't look like he hacked his arm off. So we go to page 17. The more amateur hour rendering of water, and more importantly, is that I don't know if it's probably it looks like it's Spearhead. Apparently shooting at the Hydra Viper as he swims away. Terrible. Now Muskrat shows up with two dudes behind him. Who are those dudes? We already know that Polly's friends are dead. So who are these people? I don't know. Strangely, from their kind of garb, they look like they're supposed to be G.I. Joes. But we've not met any other G.I. Joes. They're not in this story. So who are these people? The drawings are... I'm being very repetitive here, and I apologize. But what we do get from a story perspective is that when he hit him with the machete, what they did do is they didn't chop his arm off. This is where I was a little confused. He says it's not scales, it's latex. They cut off part of a wetsuit. So they realize that he's not a monster. He's a human being in a wetsuit. And then Muskrat says, Paulie, you and your buddies stay here. Let us handle this. So that was Paulie. Even though they were mangled and shown to be, I guess they're not. I guess that's their way of saying they're not dead. Maybe at some point they were like, you can't kill Paulie and his buddies. Honestly, I don't know. So the guys wade into the swamp and they're trying to find, they're trying to like track the blood in the swamp, like to see where this guy went. And if you know anything about water, you know that that's not how water works. So they do come across further in the swamp some huts, like real Quonset type huts. The light's too steady for a kerosene lamp. There's got to be electric in there. So come on, let's pay him a visit. And they notice that there's an alarm system. So someone wants this place left alone. They're sneaking up on it. This page. We're on page 19. It's not a terribly rendered page, although the first panel is not good. Page 20 is a little more finished, although there's a massive, like horizontal panel up top that's kind of the establishing shot for what's the first room inside one of these huts, and it's just empty. It's just an empty room. There's no reason for this. If you're not going to fill that space up with something interesting, don't do it. But we realize that what we got here, Spearhead and Max. Spearhead is going to send Max in to surprise the people. So he throws what does he do? Does he throw he throws a glove in there and Max retrieves the glove or something like that. It's a little foggy as to what he's actually doing here. But Max jumps into this room with these two dudes, whoever these dudes are. We're on page 21, which is just a garbage rendering of a page. And these two almost stick figures, I'm not joking, jump out of bed. Why were they laying in bed when the previous panel had them sitting in chairs? This looks like literally they've woken up from a nap. And when the guys run outside, they run into Spearhead and Max. So conceptually, I like it. So I'm trying to find the bright side here. Conceptually, I like what's going on here. He's using Max to draw them out. Very much, it's like what Han Solo did at the Endor shield station. They drew the guys out, and then they were standing. And then the rest of the rebels were standing there with guns drawn. So that's what happens here. So the Joes use this little super elevator to go downstairs, and they're surprised to see a massive laboratory. And this is rendered fine. It's not good, but it's rendered fine. And the doctors are making these monsters, right? Doctors are ready to graft the webs onto these things. The subject shows no signs of rejecting the plasma alteration. And it says, these things are the latest in Cobra's insane race towards world domination. Physically altered amphibious humans able to withstand greater pressures under the oceans, ... the Hydro Vipers. And that's what we've been dealing with this whole time. Smells like a Cobra setup, and you're right. Bottom floor, mad scientists and monsters, etc. they find that that kid from the front, he is still imprisoned in a terribly drawn prison, jail cell. Words. I'm sorry that I'm being so repetitive with this, guys. I'm not even kidding. You need to see this book. They tell the kid that their old friends are Polly's and they're here to rescue him, and just trust us. Come on, kid. They could use a diversion, etc. So they're getting ready to make their way out, and in a what was his name? The Cajun cook. There, he mixes cayenne pepper. Muskrat does. He, in their feeding tubes, he puts cayenne pepper into the feeding tube, and that is what wakes up the nascent Hydra Viper. In a really just what is going on in this panel? I don't know. There is drawings that should never have been sent to a printer that are on this page. I don't know if this Hydra Viper did he just cut this man's head off, or what is going on with this? There is a pencil, like a line sketch of a giggling muskrat in the background. It's I gotta stop. So they throw a couple of grenades. The grenades explode. And the Joes make their way out of it, and the grenades set off a chain reaction, murdering everyone down there. Come on, the whole place is going up. So the Joes were able to rescue one kid, and I wish my daddy could see this one. Wow, you guys play rough. Only way when you play with Cobra. Hey, where's Max? And Max the whole time has been sitting. I think it's sitting in a tree. I can't tell because the rendering is that bad. I don't know what Max is doing. I think he maybe is licking a paw and just chilling while the guys are, risking life and limb. And then there's a couple pages of ads for this. So much to say that I can't say anymore. It's that bad, guys. I've actually had this for a while. I haven't read it until today. Boy, is this a bad book. For all the reasons that we've gone over. I don't know what happened to Polly. I don't think Polly was meant to live, and someone told him Polly can't die and his friends can't die, because they certainly don't show up at the end of the story. Were the kids being turned into Hydro Vipers? Is that what was happening? Were they being fed to Hydro Vipers? I don't understand what was going on. My understanding was that Hydro Vipers were Cobra soldiers that were experimented on. If you experiment on and turn them into grotesque monsters, does that mean they then want to serve Cobra? Is there a level of mind control involved? None of this is answered. None of this is even addressed. Were there other kids that Muskrat and Spearhead then blew up with those grenades at the end? They certainly killed all the scientists. And if those Hydro Vipers were the experimented upon youths that were being kidnapped, you just killed them all. There's no possibility of saving them. You know what I mean? Don't read this book. I don't ever need to see this book reprinted. This book should never be discussed. I'm glad we did it here today to warn you all. This is one of the worst to ever do it. So I appreciate all of you. I hate bringing this negativity. If you want a good G.I. Joe palette cleanser, go to your local comic shop and get some of the Skybound stuff. Both the Energon universe and the Larry Hama universe are both firing on all cylinders. Those are some good G.I. Joe stories. That'll wash your palate clean of this. I'm going to keep this in my collection because I'm a completist. I will never read this book again. So thank you and good night, everyone. Now you Joe, and unfortunately with G.I. Joe in 3D, the annual, Joeing is half the battle. Drawing is apparently the other half, and they forgot to do it.